I used to work at a gas station in rural Kentucky, off Highway 23, about 15 miles out from anything you'd call a town. It was one of those forgotten little stations, barely lit, barely staffed, and open 24/7 for truckers, drifters, and people who didn't have anywhere else to go. I took the night shift to pay off some college debt, midnight to 8 a.m. Boring, quiet, and paid just enough to keep the lights on. Most nights, it was just me and the low hum of the fluorescent lights. Occasionally, a car would roll through for gas, but people rarely came inside unless it was to grab coffee, cigarettes, or something microwavable. You learn to appreciate the silence, until one night, when silence became something else. It was February. I remember because the heater had died earlier that week, and I'd been wearing 2 jackets just to stay warm. It was around 2:30 a.m. when I heard the ding from the pump. Pump 3 lit up. A pickup truck had pulled in. Old. Maybe a 90s Ford. Paint flaking, one headlight out. It idled there for a moment before the door opened and a man stepped out. What stood out immediately was that he wasn't wearing a jacket. Not even a long-sleeve shirt. Just a sleeveless tee, cargo pants, and boots. The temperature outside was maybe 8 degrees. Colder with wind chill. But he didn't seem bothered. No shivering, no rush. He just stood there, hands at his sides, staring at the front door of the store like he was sizing it up. I watched from behind the counter, waiting for him to move. After maybe 30 seconds, he started walking toward the entrance. The automatic doors opened, and he stepped inside. Now, when someone walks into a place like that in the middle of the night, you usually get some kind of acknowledgement. A nod, a grunt, something. But he didn't say a word, didn't look at me. He just turned left, toward the freezer aisle in the back, and walked down it like he knew exactly where he was going. He stopped at the second freezer door, the one with frozen burritos and microwave dinners, and then he just stood there. At first, I figured he was just deciding what to buy, but minutes passed and he didn't move. His hand was on the freezer handle, but he didn't open it. He just stood, completely still, like he was waiting for something. After 5 minutes, I got this weird feeling in my chest. Not panic, just wrong. Like the air was thicker than it should have been. I cleared my throat and called out, "Sir? Everything all right?" He didn't respond. Didn't even twitch. But then, the light inside the freezer flickered. Just for a second, like a strobe flash. And in that brief flicker, I saw something that made my blood run cold. In the reflection of the freezer glass, I saw his mouth move. Only, it wasn't moving on his face. His real face, the one I could see directly, was expressionless. Still. But in the reflection, his mouth was whispering. Fast. Repeating something I couldn't hear. I froze. I was maybe 20 feet away, but I suddenly felt like I shouldn't get any closer, like whatever he was saying wasn't meant to be heard. Still, I stepped out from behind the counter and walked slowly toward him. As I got closer, I noticed his skin was pale. Not cold weather pale, sickly pale, like wax. His arms looked stiff, tense, like he hadn't moved in hours. The moment I reached the edge of the aisle, he did something I'll never forget. He opened the freezer door and stepped inside. Not like he was reaching for something. He physically stepped into the freezer, and then he pulled the door closed behind him. I ran. I yanked the freezer door open, my breath fogging up in the cold air, and nothing. He was gone. The shelves were full. No footprints on the floor. Just bags of ice and rows of frozen burritos. I stood there for probably a full minute, just trying to make sense of what I saw. I checked the store. I checked the bathroom. Even went outside and looked around the pumps. The pickup truck? Gone. No sound. No engine. No tire marks in the snow. I tried to calm myself down, told myself I was tired. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe he left while I was checking the freezer. But that didn't explain what I saw next. Around 4 a.m., I pulled up the security footage to reassure myself. And this is where it got worse. In the footage, Pump 3 never activates. No truck, no man walking in. The store door never opens. But the camera inside? It does show the freezer door opening, all by itself. It swings open, stays that way for nearly 10 seconds, then closes on its own. I played that clip over and over. I even saved it to a USB before I quit. Yeah, I quit. That was my last week working there. But still, when I drive past that gas station, I still glance toward the freezer aisle through the window. And I swear, even now, that light still flickers, only when no one's around. I used to work delivery for a small auto parts company in Arizona. Most days were simple. Drop off a part, pick up a signature, head to the next shop. But sometimes, especially when the schedule ran late, I'd end up driving stretches of desert highway at night. Long, dark roads where you wouldn't see another car for miles. This happened last summer. It was late July. Around 11:30 p.m., I had just finished my last delivery of the day and was heading back home when I noticed my gas tank was almost empty. The nearest open station was about 25 minutes out, an old Chevron on Route 64. I had been there once or twice, always quiet. The kind of place where the lights buzz a little too loud and the coffee machine looks like it hasn't worked since 2006. I pulled in, parked at Pump 1, and started filling up. That's when I noticed the other car. It was parked off to the side, under a broken streetlight, just barely visible. A silver Toyota Camry, maybe early 2000s. Beat up, faded paint, no plates. I didn't see anyone inside at first, but the driver's window was down. The longer I stared, the more uneasy I felt. There's something about seeing a car just sitting there, quiet, unmoving, that makes you instinctively watch it, like your brain's trying to tell you something doesn't add up. As I finished fueling, I heard the door to the convenience store open behind me. Footsteps. Slow, uneven. I turned around and saw a man walking out. Mid-40s, skinny, wearing an oversized hoodie and jeans that were soaked at the bottom like he'd walked through something wet. He glanced at me for a second, but it wasn't a normal look. It was that kind of glance where someone registers you, not just sees you, but logs you in their mind. He walked past me without a word and headed straight for the Camry. But then he did something strange. He didn't get in the driver's seat. He opened the back door, got in, and closed it. The car never turned on. The lights never came on. It just sat there. I got in my van and locked the doors. I didn't know why I felt so tense. Maybe it was just the way the guy moved, or the fact that I never saw a driver. But what happened next still makes me feel sick when I think about it. I pulled around the lot to loop back onto the road, and as my headlights swept across the Camry, there were two people in the back seat now. The man in the hoodie, and someone else beside him. Except this second person was turned completely toward my vehicle, face pressed against the window, and I swear they were smiling. Not a normal smile. A wide, frozen grin. Like someone who'd forgotten what emotions were supposed to look like and was trying to mimic them. I didn't even slow down. I drove straight out of there and didn't look back. 15 minutes later, I stopped at a well-lit rest stop just to breathe. I figured maybe I was overreacting, but then I noticed something that made my stomach drop. There was something in my passenger seat. Not a person, but a small, crumpled paper bag. From the gas station. I hadn't bought anything. I didn't go inside. I never opened my door on that side. Inside the bag was a single item. A cheap gas station cell phone. One of those prepaid flip phones you can get for $20. It buzzed once. No number, just the word passenger. I threw it out the window and drove all the way home without stopping. I called the station the next day, asked if they had cameras in the lot. The woman who answered said they'd had a break-in the week before. Their security system was down. No footage, no logs, nothing. And here's the worst part. She asked me to describe the Camry. When I did, she went quiet for a moment. Then she said, "That car's been sitting abandoned in the lot for over a year. No one's supposed to be in it. I don't drive that route anymore. And I never leave my doors unlocked, even at gas stations, especially at gas stations." I am Rachel, and I was 28 when it happened. Living alone, working as a traveling pharmacy rep across Texas. I was used to long drives, empty roads, small towns, the kind of places where the gas stations double as diners and the only thing on the radio after 10 p.m. is static. This was in early November. Cold, damp. One of those nights where the fog sticks to your windshield no matter how high you crank the defrost. I had one last delivery to make, somewhere outside of Jasper. My GPS had rerouted me twice because of a construction detour. I was running low on gas and even lower on patience. It was around 1:15 a.m. when I spotted the glow, a dim greenish hue in the fog. A gas station, no chain, no branding. Just a crooked sign that read Hilltop Market. One pump, one flickering overhead light. A store that looked like it hadn't been updated since the 90s. I pulled in, rolled to a stop under the light. There were no other cars, no music, no signs of life. I shut off the engine but kept the headlights on. That fog, it felt heavier than usual. Like it didn't want me to see too far past the pump. I stepped out, locked the door behind me, habit, and began fueling. That's when I noticed the ice machine. It sat to the left of the store's front door, white metal, rust on the corners, and there was a man sitting beside it. I didn't see him right away. He blended into the shadows, knees pulled to his chest, hood over his head down like he was sleeping. I paused, my hand still on the pump. He didn't move, didn't twitch or breathe visibly, just sat there, curled up like he'd been there for hours. It was cold out, not freezing, but cold enough that anyone sitting like that would be shivering. I watched him for a few seconds, unsure what to do. He didn't react to the sound of my car, or the pump clicking on. Nothing. I figured maybe he was homeless or passed out. Still, something felt off. I went to the door of the store to see if anyone was working, but the glass was fogged over from the inside. I wiped a small circle with my sleeve and peeked in. No one. Lights were on, registers glowing, coolers humming, but there was no movement. No clerk, no sound, like it was frozen in time. I looked back at the man by the ice machine. He was looking at me now, head still down, but his eyes were lifted, just enough, not wide-eyed, not threatening, just watching, expressionless. I pretended not to notice, went back to the pump, finished up. As I reached for the nozzle to put it back, I noticed something else. There was a second person, inside the store, behind the counter, barely visible through the glass, not moving, just standing stiffly, like a mannequin. But there weren't mannequins at gas stations, and something about the posture, too straight, too still. I blinked. When I looked again, they were gone. My stomach turned. I looked back toward the ice machine. The man was no longer there. There hadn't been enough time for him to walk off, but he wasn't beside the machine. He wasn't on the lot. He wasn't anywhere I could see. I reversed out of that lot so fast I almost clipped the pump. Didn't care. As I pulled out, my headlights passed over the front of the store one last time. And there he was, standing just behind the glass, his face barely visible through the fogged window. Not pressed up against it, not trying to get my attention, just watching, expressionless, like he had been all along. He didn't follow, didn't move. I drove 30 miles before I stopped again. At a well-lit Love's truck stop where there were people, food, music playing over cheap speakers. I sat there for a while, trying to calm down, convincing myself it was just two weird people at a weird place on a bad night. But the next morning, something didn't add up. When I tried to look up Hilltop Market on the map to report what happened, there was nothing. No station, no market, no listing anywhere along the route I'd taken, just empty green patches and farm roads. I even checked the receipt I thought I'd pulled from the pump. Blank. Just a torn slip of thermal paper. No time, no location, just a single line. Paid. I haven't seen that fog since. Not like that night. And I've learned something since then. If you ever pull into a station and someone's already watching you, before you even see them, leave.